Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my favorite show of the week, The Wine Down, for two reasons. Hillary, of course, and wine. We have some interesting topics to talk about today, some of which are going to be from the episodes that you watched earlier this week and some from articles that we've read in the news, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Hillary, do you want to tell everyone about the wine that we're drinking today?
Sure. We are having the Dante Cabernet Sauvignon from VJB Cellars.
Ooh.
So looking forward to having a little wine and relaxing on a Friday night.
Yes, we are. I don't know about anyone else, but it's been a long week.
Mm-hmm. It has been a long week.
So we are all deserving of this moment, right?
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal has a couple really interesting articles about women in the workforce, and I actually touched on one on Coffee with Kirsten yesterday on Thursday, and today Hillary and I are going to touch on another one a little bit. And what's the title of it? Like, what is it? It's a long title.
It's about the McKinsey & Company and leanin.org study that they did called Women in the Workplace. And I think it had some really interesting findings. They interviewed or surveyed over 65,000 employees. Mm-hmm. And I think the caveat here is that it was mostly white collar workers. So I think that is a very interesting thing. But it really talked about the burnout that women are experiencing, and especially at a higher rate than men in similar or the same jobs. Mm-hmm. There were 42% of women who felt burnout over the last year versus 38% of men. And I thought that it was really interesting too, because as you went up as women went up in the ranks, it was an even bigger disparity between men and women as to who felt burnt out versus not. So women felt at a higher level, at the management level, 52% of women felt that they were burnt out versus 41% of men. And then senior management, it was even bigger. So I think that it was really interesting to see that the gap widened as women went up the corporate ladder.
And do you think that's because that there was just more on their plate?
I think it's because there was more on their plate because they're doing, both working all the time. That was one of the other things that the article talked about, was that women feel burnt out, and a lot of employees, not just women, but specifically women felt burnt out because they were working all the time. Right. It didn't shut off. And then add that on that you're also trying to figure out how to homeschool or facilitate schooling for your children, whether you're homeschooling or facilitating Zoom calls.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
I
feel like there was a point where everyone thought, oh, I get to be home with my family more. Like, this is going to give me a break. I don't need to do a commute. Mm-hmm. Like, I can be settled in my pajamas at home, do work, be with my kids. But then it sort of took a turn for the worse. Mm-hmm. Like, they still had the same responsibilities that they had at work, but now on top of it, their kids aren't going to school. They're home.
Right.
So they're, 24/7 childcare, and creating a classroom, basically, right? A digital classroom for their kids.
Right.
So there's no downtime. It's just go, and then start it over again the next day.
Right. No downtime, and your support system has been pulled away because, especially at the beginning, you couldn't have extra people in your house, right? You couldn't have a babysitter come over.
Grandma can't come over. Take care of the kids. Right.
The cool aunt can't help with after school care or helping with Zoom care.
That's a good point.
You didn't,
gosh. Yeah.
And you couldn't, everybody was very worried, especially at the beginning, to even have friends, do the pod wasn't even a thing until August of last year. Right. So I think, and the article also touches on the fact that, to your point, not only were women doing their corporate work, but they were also doing the childcare work. And then they were also doing a majority of the work that has to be done at home, the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning. Doesn't mean that, men aren't helping out, but a lot of that still felt still fell on
the shoulders of
the
women,
shoulders of
which
the
it
moms.
just tends to.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully that'll sort of phase out at some point. I think it's starting to.
And it's not every household by any means, but it certainly feels like, and
I think to balance out the weight.
Exactly.
Things.
Exactly.
It's important. Well, for myself, I can't fully relate to what was happening because during the pandemic, my husband and I actually lost work entirely, and I was actually pregnant, so I didn't have a child yet. So for me, I was so desperate for things to do because we were just quarantined with ourselves for almost a year.
Yeah.
But our neighbors, now they're both social workers, and they have twins, and they had to do remote learning as well as work from home. So they were counseling people on, like, the topic really was the pandemic, like issues people were having in regards to the pandemic, plus having their own issues with the pandemic, Right. So it was like, honestly, I don't know how they did it. And I know that was the story for so many people this past year. But what was it like for you?
Yeah, it was really tough. I think we had a toddler at the time, so she wasn't in school.
Yeah.
Already. She was too young for preschool. But childcare shut down. And my husband and I were both working from home.
Yeah.
And it was really intense because he would have to get on a call. I was on Zoom calls basically from 8:30 in the morning until like 6 p.m. at night, pretty much straight through, but yet trying to juggle taking care of our daughter at some points. And then, as soon as we're done, we're doing dinner, we're doing bath time. And then we would also jump right back into work from 8:30 at night until probably midnight.
And whose work takes precedence? Like, how do you decide, It's like,
right,
all right, I need you to watch the kid and because I need to do this. And then you're just kind of like juggling.
And that was the major struggle that we went through, for sure. It was, my work's more important than yours. And that's not necessarily the case by any means. Right.
But I could see how that frustration would become real after a while.
Yeah, and just trying to figure out the communication, I think, was the important part of really sitting down. Like every day we would have to, or every night we would sit down and walk through our calendars the night for the next day to make sure that we could juggle when we would each have her. So it was tough.
Jeez.
And then she started preschool and life got a lot easier, which was great.
Oh, good. Good. You deserved that, and you deserve this glass of wine.
That is true. But surprisingly, I mean, I don't know. It was also nice at the same time because we did get more family time together. It was just very fraught with lots of different pushing and pulling and just always feeling like we were both always working and both always trying to do childcare and survive.
You weren't actually getting that downtime, that quality time that you would want when you're in this kind of a situation. Because for myself, I was lucky that it did force some down, like too much downtime, like for us actually. My husband played a lot of video games, and he'll hate me for saying that, but. But yeah, it's interesting how everyone's story is so different. But yeah, so many women were just affected so heavily from this, like just taking on the weight of everything.
And I think the other thing that they touch on in the article and in the survey as well is the fact that women actually do. A higher proportion of women to men want to continue to have a hybrid option in terms of flexibility at work.
Yeah.
And a lot of women took a step back and looked at their careers and said, is this really what I want to be doing? Am I happy? I think one of the other interesting things about the study is that it talked about how women, even given all of these burdens of work, family, home, more women want to have flexibility to work from home going forward. A hybrid model is where women really feel like they are able to do a little bit more juggling, especially given that support systems are still a little bit more scaled back than they were pre-pandemic. So I think the other point that the study made was that women are more interested in working part-time remotely, so a hybrid version, more so than men, with the workers that are in the office versus the workers that are out of the office. And how do you make sure that both are on a career path at an equal tempo?
Are you building those same relationships if you're not actually present in there?
Right, exactly. So I think there were a lot of different pieces that the article had, and very interesting study that women are more burnt out than men, especially since
they're starting
the pandemic.
to reevaluate what they want their work life and home life to look like after this experience as well, right?
Exactly.
So I thought it would be interesting for us to talk about the Estate Planning 101 episode about sending kids to college and thinking about getting a health and financial power of attorney for
A POA?
A POA. Power of attorney. I'm learning. I don't know. Are you? So
we all are together.
Yeah, we all are learning together, slowly but surely. But I thought they brought up so many good points that really hit home for me, because of course my 6-month-old isn't going off to college anytime soon. But this whole idea,
That would be extraordinary.
yeah, I know. I mean, she's pretty advanced. No, she's just a potato, really, at this point. But just planting this seed in my mind about teaching her things sooner than later. Because I know for myself, in my 30s now, trying to learn about future financial planning and trusts and versus wills and all of this, right? It's really hard to learn at this point in my life because I feel like I'm playing catch up. But the idea that I could take Murphy, my child, I could take her when she is going to college, and I could say, hey, let's sit down together and let's talk about this. And she can make these decisions.
Right.
So she has some authority over her life at that age because she is, in fact, an adult at that point, right?
Right.
And so I can say, let's talk about what does it mean to have a power of attorney, and who would make the most sense for you, in that position? How do you feel about it, So they start getting used to, these conversations and these topics and, just educating them sooner than later.
Yeah. And I thought it was really interesting to have the power of attorney for healthcare and the power of attorney for the financial necessities.
Yeah.
I went to out of state college, and I'm actually surprised that my parents didn't ask me to do either of those things, because I was always the person, for whatever reason, I was the person who went to the ER with anybody who needed to go. I took 2 different people to get their appendixes out and stayed with them overnight. That was just, and I had to be that person that called the parents and said, hey,
so these are just your friends.
These are just
that you were in college with.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why I was that person, but I just was.
You're a good friend. You're a good friend.
But I think that is also a reality too, is making sure
so many parents aren't setting this up or thinking about this.
Right.
Well, you don't think about it for young people typically.
No, I wouldn't have thought about it. The first time I thought about it was when we were having a baby, and they actually make sure that you have your POA on file, or at least our healthcare system did, so that in case anything happened during the birth, somebody was there to help make those decisions.
Right.
In my case, it was my husband, but I think it could be a lot of different people, but you do think about it, and it might be a different person for healthcare versus financial.
Right.
So I think that it's a very important step. Not only are you setting your kids up for success and having them be part of the conversation instead of saying, hey, by the way, I understand that you're an adult. We're going to get this POA done.
Yeah.
And here, I'm going to be your POA. Instead of having that conversation and having them say, who do you think would make the most sense to be part of this conversation to help you with, not necessarily help you with these decisions, but to be the point of contact and to be the person who you can talk to about these things.
Right.
Or who can act for you in case you're incapacitated.
Well, that's what scared me the most, is when they brought up this whole, the situation that, if something happens to your child and, you aren't able to get all of the information. Can you imagine being, a 5-hour drive away or further and not knowing what happened to your child. They're in the hospital and you can't get any information. I mean, that's terrifying.
I had a very similar thing happen. One of my girlfriends in college had a grand mal seizure, whatever that, I'm not quite sure what the terminology is, but it was really intense. And it happened during one of the biggest snowstorms while I was in college.
Of course.
So it was blizzard conditions.
Right.
Her family actually lived only 45 minutes away, but took her parents 3 hours to get to us because everything.
Longest 3 hours of their lives.
And they were just, I was able to go in the ambulance with her, so she had somebody with her. But
you really have been the person for people.
But it was, I mean, when her parents got there, they were just so distraught because all the things are going through their mind.
Yep.
And I can't, now that I'm a parent, I can't even imagine.
It does change things. Like the second you become a parent. I noticed. So Tucker Allen does this summer package for $100,
right?
Where they'll get you your health and financial power of attorney.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I hope they're doing that in 18 years. Can you still do this in 18 years? I was like, that's a good deal, isn't it?
Good deal, yeah.
Huh?
I thought one of the interesting things, though. I mean, you have a 6-month-old, I have a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
One of the other things getting a kid set up for college is how do you pay for college? Yeah. And that's always a very personal decision. But I think that, when our daughter was born, we set up a 529 for her. Yeah. And that was the thing that we asked people to put into instead of getting her gifts for the first couple years because she didn't understand. She wasn't paying attention. She's not paying attention. Like, yes, please, you can totally give gifts if you want to.
We just did this.
But it was like,
and it's
so
I think
helpful.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
Because you're investing in her future versus, the great $20 toy that she's going to play with for 5 minutes and then break.
Right, exactly. Basically, you can wrap toilet roll and give it to them for a while and they'll be good to go.
Cardboard box. It's the best.
Exactly. Next, we're going to talk about shopping for the best financial advisor, which is such a funny topic because what does your husband do?
He is a financial advisor.
And he's my financial advisor.
I didn't really shop around, let's be honest.
Right. So what is that like, being married to a financial advisor first?
I think it's great. Mm-hmm. We sit down and discuss our finances quite often.
Did he check all of the boxes after you watched the episode about what you need to look for in finding a financial advisor?
He did. I think what is super helpful, one of the major things that they talk about is making sure that the person who you are entrusting with your money or entrusting with helping you with your plan has the same mentality about money and understands your goals and what you want to do.
Right.
And obviously I have that connection with my husband, so that's easy. But I also think that is super important with similar to a doctor, like your general practitioner. You want somebody who's going to listen to you and then give you the professional advice that you need.
Yes.
And I think that's what a financial advisor is. And but it's just for your money.
Right.
It's not for your body, but it's for your money. And then they're the ones who know all the different things that go into a healthy financial plan. The insurances, your different, whether it's real estate or the stock market, how comfortable are you with risk, which is a huge thing.
Right.
How much money do you have to play with in the stock market? Because it's always a gamble.
Right.
Nothing's a sure thing. As much as, people on the internet want to make you think that you can only go up and up
TikTok
and up.
Videos or whatever. Exactly.
But I think that they're the ones who are versed on all of this and they're able to then figure out, what's your estate plan look like and should you go get a will or a trust?
Right.
If you already have one of those in place, then that's not necessarily something that they need to help you with, but they can point you in the direction of all the different things that you do need to do in order to have a holistic plan together.
Well, and they talked about as well, making sure that your financial advisor has the credentials to really call themselves a financial advisor. Mm-hmm. So your husband's ours, and we did not really screen him. So Do we make a good choice? I should have watched this episode before I said yes to this relationship that we have now.
You should have.
I'm screening it through you right now, and you're giving me all the right answers, so this is great. I feel like I'm in safe hands.
Well, I think one of the super interesting things that they brought up is that CFP, which is the accreditation that you're talking about, Certified Financial Planner, which is a 2-day test. One of my best friends and former roommates also went through it, so I saw her studying for this whole hog. It's so intense.
I would fail that every time, every single time.
But what's super important, one of the major things is that to have your CFP, you have to be a fiduciary.
What?
Right. Exactly. Yes. So a fiduciary means that you have to keep your clients' money and their priorities in mind.
Got it.
So you're not selling them a product because you might be making more commission on it.
Off of that.
You need to get them the right product that is going to be better for their plan.
I just didn't know it was called that.
Right. Yes. Now you know a fancy term.
Yeah, exactly.
Fancy jargon.
You just want to know that like your best interest is in mind.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I feel better about my life choices after talking to you. I was really glad this was one of our hot topics today because
me too, and it's a really easy one to discuss over wine.
Definitely. And it's so close to home for you as well.
Exactly.
I've been wanting to ask her about this actually, so this is pretty cool. Well, moving on to our last topic.
Yeah.
Last but not least. So on Cunningham Legal this week, they talked about how much a living trust should cost. So last week on our show, we talked about wills versus trusts, but it just goes a little bit more into like what a living trust is and how much it should cost and what to look for. And I thought it was interesting that when they said that like some lawyers will get you because they'll charge hourly,
right?
And you'll not realize that, and then you'll come out on the other end and you'll be like, "What is this bill?"
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's dirty business.
That's
there.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting how they were talking about a revocable living trust and how to set it up. And to be speaking with an expert and somebody who is doing estate planning, an estate planning attorney, versus working with somebody who might not be as versed because there are different nuances, and it can cost you more in the long run if you're working with somebody who might not have the expertise.
Exactly, yeah. And it will cost your loved ones more if they end up in probate court, right? Because that can become really expensive.
Exactly. And I think that was very interesting too, was that they talked about how somebody who knows what they're doing will set up the right trust for you, because you might have a simple trust, but there are other documents if you're working with a true estate planning attorney that you actually need not only to have that revocable living trust to feed into it. And I thought that was really interesting, and it actually made me go back and look at mine.
Good job.
Just to make sure that we had everything covered, because we had done it a couple of years ago and things have changed subsequently. So I think it's really interesting that the video really made me kind of look back on our trust and about the cost of it. I think when you are working with somebody who's an expert, when you're working with somebody who knows what they're doing, it may feel like you're actually spending more money than you think you need to. But in reality, to your point, if you're paying somebody by the hour who doesn't know what they're doing, it's going to take them longer. So therefore, it will probably cost you more.
Right.
But when you have somebody who knows what they're doing,
someone that specializes
in it, it should be an easier process.
Also, this process is overwhelming, which is what makes people avoid even doing it, because you're like, you know, we probably don't need to worry about this. So it's an easy thing to put off. So if you can like find somebody that can make it as seamless as possible, like that's key, I think.
Right.
Just getting it done.
Well, and I think also when we went and got ours done, it was a very conversational situation. I thought it was going to be like, check this XYZ, blah, blah, blah. But our lawyer actually had some very interesting questions and things that we didn't think of going into it. So we had to come back with the answers that we wanted.
Right.
Which, and to your point, nobody wants to think about this because technically it's talking about death and talking about dying.
Yeah.
Or talking about so nobody really wants to talk about it, but death and taxes happen to everybody.
Right.
That is the one certain thing in life.
Facts of life, baby. Yep.
So making sure you are set up and you have your money and your estate protected.
Yep.
I think the other thing that they don't really touch on is how many people can really benefit from having a trust in place. And how it's not just high net worth individuals. Like, yes. So yes, if you are making a lot of money, it definitely makes sense to have a will and a trust in place. But even people who are middle class, this is just a way for you to protect your assets, no matter what they might be.
Right.
And I thought there were a couple other interesting things that they talked about too. One was that you need to actually sign the document. You need to sign the paper, because without signing it, it's just paper. It's not a document. And that was just like,
imagine like forgetting that step. Like your kid's like, they didn't sign it?
Right.
Thanks. You know?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
And then I think the other thing about working with an expert in the field is actually funding the trust. And so if you're working with somebody who knows what they're doing, they're going to help you with the paperwork to get it actually funded. So to put everything into the trust so that it actually stands, versus somebody who's just going to drop some paperwork for you and it might not actually be fully funded.
Which then it just seems like a waste of time, isn't it?
Exactly. For everybody.
Right.
Basically.
I thought they brought up a really good point about staying on top of the trust that you have in place, because they were saying, like, say you refinance your home, but then you don't update that in the trust.
Yep.
Straight to probate court for your trustee.
Right.
You know? And so it's like just staying on top of it and remembering, because things shift and change as life goes on. And I'm sure that a lot of people are like, oh, I've done that.
Right.
You know? And
Yeah.
like, I'm not thinking about that anymore. Right?
Exactly.
So I thought that was a really good tip to keep in mind. Not that I've even set up my trust yet, but we've had the conversation now. We were on our little walk with our daughter, and I was like, hey, so I've been watching these videos, and and that's the first step, right?
Yeah, it's a first step. And I think it's also important, since you do have a small daughter, part of it is also talking about what might happen to your daughter if both of you pass away.
Yep.
And for us, that was a super important reason why
Very important.
I wanted to get it done. My husband, the financial advisor, wanted to do it because of the monetary aspect, and then we were able to have conversations with the people who are first in line and second in line.
Yep.
You know, God forbid that happen, but just in case, I have peace of mind.
You want to be in control of what would happen to your child.
Exactly.
If you weren't there, and who would be taking care of your child. I mean,
exactly.
That's a huge important decision to make. And that was actually one thing that really, really motivated my conversation with my husband, because I need to know that she will be in good hands.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, that's scary.
But I think, and I think it goes back to the fact that you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
So you might be paying a little bit more, because the range was $10 for like a printout of the internet to $9,000 plus. And I think it depends on how complex your situation is.
Right.
But then also working with an expert, so your value is actually there because everything is done correctly.
Well, and if you have a ton of assets and you know, you're on the wealthier side of things, yeah, it might cost you more because there's more to navigate, right? But like, you know, if you have a couple, it's not going to cost you like $10,000 to get it done, right?
It certainly shouldn't.
So hopefully it sort of reflects where you're at financially in your life.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
and it's worth it for the peace of mind.
Exactly.
That's what I got out of it. All right. Thank you for joining us on the wind down. It's our second week and it's really fun. And we can't wait to see you again next week when we discuss more of the episodes that you will be seeing, hopefully. Oh, and remember to watch all of the episodes on Roku and Apple TV.
Yep.
Do not forget.
Cheers.